Nowadays, we can know the top 10 wealthiest people in the world in a matter of seconds. However, that only counts the people who are alive today. Humans have been using money in some shape or form for more than 3,000 years. It'll be really interesting to see who could be ranked the top 10 if we consider anyone who ever existed, at least in modern history. Is it going to be Genghis Khan, or is someone like Jeff Bezos still going to come out on top? Find out in this video. Of course, the numbers provided in the video are after some precise calculations performed primarily by university professors who have adjusted their wealth according to current times and resources. Let's get started then, shall we? Number 1. Mansa Musa. At number 1 we have Mansa Musa, who lived during the years 1280 to 1337. There is no estimate available for his wealth per se, but according to the records and word of mouth that got passed on, Mansa Musa was richer than it was possible to be described. He was the king of Timbuktu, and many people refer to him as the richest man in history. He was also in control of an army with 200,000 foot soldiers and 40,000 archers. There are tales out there that describe his journey to Mecca, where he's marching with dozens of camels, each laden with hundreds of pounds of gold. This alone seems to have caused a currency crisis in Egypt. Number 2. Augustus Caesar. Augustus Caesar lived during the ages of 63 BC to 14 AD. His wealth is estimated to be worth around 4.6 trillion US dollars if it were still there in 2019. Caesar was not only in charge of the Roman Empire, which controlled more than a quarter of the world economy, he also had heaps of his own personal wealth. It's estimated that at one point, Caesar owned a fifth of his empire's entire economy, which would be about 6% of the entire world's resources or money. According to Ian Morris, who is a professor at Stanford University, Caesar personally owned the entirety of Egypt at one point in history. Number 3. Emperor Shenzong. Emperor Shenzong was a Chinese emperor who lived during the years of 1048 to 1085. Like Caesar, he was in charge of 25 to 30% of the global GDP. That is when the Chinese dynasty was extremely powerful. Although most of his wealth was spread across the nation, Shenzong had control over all of it. It is described that the only reason China's Song dynasty was as rich as it was due to impressive tax collection techniques. Those techniques were described as the way ahead of their times, which European countries at the time could not compete with. This basically shifted the world's wealth to the side of Emperor Shenzong. Number 4. Akbar. Akbar was one of the Mughal empires that ruled over India before the British had much power in the region. Akbar lived between the years of 1542 to 1605. He too led an extravagant life, which was only possible because his empire was responsible for about 30% of the world's trade. An economic historian by the name of Angus Maddison says that India's accumulated wealth was no less than that of England during this time, which seemed to be doing great at the time. However, the lifestyle of Akbar was much more posh than the royal family of Britain. Number 5. Joseph Stalin. If you've heard Hitler's name, chances are you've heard about Stalin as well, who was one of the key generals of the USSR when tensions between Nazi Germany and the USSR were high. Stalin had complete and total control of a nation that contributed to 9.6% of the world's GDP at the time. Stalin lived during the years of 1878 to 1953, making him one of the richest people in modern history. If we adjusted the production by the USSR to 2019, we would reach a figure of $7.5 trillion. This is the amount of money Stalin is said to have been in charge of. Of course, Stalin did not control all that money, but he did manage to leverage that worth for his personal gain whenever he wanted to. Number 6. Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie lived during the years of 1835 and 1919. He made his wealth during the Industrial Revolution and could very well be the richest American of all time. While Rockefeller often gets the hype, there is a good chance that Andrew Carnegie was quite nearby in terms of wealth. He had accumulated wealth equal to $372 billion today. Interestingly enough, Andrew gave away literally all of his wealth before passing away. Carnegie was basically a Scottish immigrant who sold his steel company to JP Morgan for $480 million in 1901. That figure only gets higher if we adjust it to current times. Number 7. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller lived during the years of 1839 and 1937 and belonged to the United States. His total wealth was estimated to be around $341 billion. Rockefeller made most of his money through the petroleum trade after he started investing in the petroleum industry in 1863. Only 17 years later, by 1880, his oil company controlled upwards of 90% of America's total oil production. Because the US has enormous oil reserves, Rockefeller definitely earned his name. Since the US did not keep official records of personal wealth until 1932, there are some ambiguities, but according to estimates, he controlled above 2% of the US GDP. Number 8. Alan Rufus. Also known as Alan the Red, Alan Rufus belonged to England and lived from 1040 to 1093. He was the nephew of William the Conqueror and accompanied him in the Norman Conquest. At the time of his death, he owned about £11,000. That sum might appear insanely low, but according to Bill Rubenstein and Philip Beresford, this number was the same as 7% of England's GDP in those times. If we convert this figure to the year 2018, it would amount to $194 billion. Number 9. Jeff Bezos. At number 9, we have none other than Jeff Bezos himself, who is currently the richest man on Earth. Elon Musk temporarily passed him in total assets, but that only lasted for a couple of days until Jeff regained his top spot. He passed the sum of $100 billion for the first time in 2017. That was when he formally earned the title of the wealthiest person in the world by Forbes magazine. He also became the very first centibillionaire on the wealth index of Forbes. He also received the title of the richest man in modern history after his personal wealth increased to $150 billion in July of 2018. At the moment, Jeff Bezos sits at a staggering $196 billion, not very short of a full $200 billion. Number 1. Genghis Khan. At the number 1 spot, we have Genghis Khan, who lived between 1162 and 1227. Genghis Khan ruled over the Mongolian Empire, but his wealth is incredibly hard to estimate. It would be easier to say that he owned so much land that it would not be easily possible to put a number on it. One reason for his success was Genghis's policy to share the war's loot with his soldiers and commanders. This acted as a huge incentive to fight harder in the future. Genghis Khan ruled the Mongolian Empire during the time when Mongolians were tougher than any other nation in the world. It is estimated that about 16 million males in the world carry Genghis Khan's DNA. That's about 0.5% of the world's population. This only became possible as Genghis Khan slept with thousands of women and fathered hundreds of children. That's all from this one, folks. Thanks for watching. And if you liked what you saw, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel for similar content in the future. Take care and goodbye.